This happened yesterday. My boss is incredibly controlling and a serious micromanager. I was supposed to meet him in another city yesterday for a client meeting. He doesn't trust anyone, so he told me I had to text him for every leg of the journey, when I woke up, when I got my cab, got to the airport, etc. So I did. Starting at 3 a.m. when I got up, and making sure to include every step, including getting breakfast. Gotta be sure I have a healthy start to my day. The look on my boss' face when I arrived, on time with no delays, was priceless, and he was sleepy and cranky all day. The client kept asking if he had slept well, and were none too impressed by his grouchy demeanor. I looked great in comparison, and maybe he will stay off my back next time. Obligatory didn't happen now, happened in the 6th grade. I have always loved to read, and before schoolwork really started I used to devour book after book. Right around 6th grade, I was obsessed with the Percy Jackson series, for the uninitiated, a fictional series about Greek mythology in the modern era, to the point where I would read it in class beneath my desk instead of paying attention. Because my stealth skills were severely underdeveloped, my teacher would usually catch me reading and tell me to put my book away, at which point I would comply and stick it in my backpack. But this one particular day, she phrased her directions in just the right way to allow some malicious compliance. Unless what you're reading pertains to what we're learning about, put it away. We were on the Greek mythology unit. Gleefully, I pulled the book up from under my desk and showed it to her. I'm reading about Greek mythology. I proudly reported. And so, that day, I was allowed to read in class. My wife and I are hosting our nephew for a couple of days while his mother is out of town on business. Since schools are closed due to sub-zero temps, he has been at our home all yesterday and today. I come into the living room to see him sprawled out across the couch with his feet on our coffee table. I told him, "I don't want to see your feet on the coffee table." He looks up from his handheld interactive babysitter and says, "Okay," while taking his feet off the coffee table, so I leave. I come back 10 minutes later and see his legs wrapped in a blanket, resting on the coffee table. Before I can say anything he looks up, smiles, and says, "You can't see my feet." I respond, "But they are on the table." A moment of pause, then an evil grin, "No, they are on the blanket. You said no feet on the table." The little bastard has me there. My mother was approaching the end to her undergraduate years, and she had to take an accounting class in order to graduate and move along to law school. It was her least favorite class by a mile, and she didn't pay attention or take notes. As the end of the semester was approaching, she saw her main problem in the class. Because she hated accounting, she hadn't done so much as a single page of the assigned, required homework, and the final for the class was approaching quickly. The test was in early December, and it was already late November. Instead of going home to spend time with her family, she worked for hours upon hours over the Thanksgiving weekend on her extremely late assignments. She didn't sleep for 2 nights in a row, and the only reason she slept on the third was that her roommate convinced her that it was for the best. She somehow finished an entire semester's work in only 72 hours, and she says that it was some of the most thorough work she had ever done. The next week, she handed her huge stack of homework to the professor of the class. She knew exactly what he was going to say, but she thought it was worth a shot anyway. The professor told her that he wouldn't accept any assignment this late, much less 2 binders of it. He told her to go read the syllabus again for my late work policies. Here's where the malicious compliance kicks in. My mother scoured the syllabus looking for his late work policy. The problem was, the syllabus didn't have a single word about late work. My mother decided to use this to her advantage and came in before class the next day with the same 2 binders full of work. The professor told her again that he wouldn't accept her work, and my mom told him about the lack of a late work policy in the syllabus. She had even brought her own copy, and the professor had to look through it himself to see that he had failed to include anything about his late work policy. "Well, I'll have to change that," he said, and my mother quickly shot back, "Yes, so here's my work for you to grade. Goodbye." The professor kept to his syllabus and graded all of my mom's work. and she got a B on the final. She has also told me that putting off all that homework was the worst decision she had ever made, and she wishes she could have gone back and done it all when she was actually supposed to. My story starts a few weeks ago on January 11, 2019, on a Friday. My engineering and design teacher Jaime had assigned a project for this semester to which she assigned me and another person to which I had never met to a project together. Mrs. Jaime gave us an entire class period to simply meet your partner and give some insight to the problem given. Ours was making a simple tension bridge with specific constraints, also to divide and mark which parts of the project would be done by who so that it would be individual grading. The first time I had met my partner, we will call him Todd, he seemed like a somewhat stand-up guy and was very nice. We talked about video games with that being a common denominator between both of us. He seemed to have no limit to gaming, however, unlike I who will put the school in front of games. Flash forward to a week before the due date. I had been doing my part on the project, we both had parts that we needed to complete such as calculations and parts, and had almost finished my half. At this point, I had been curious to see what Todd had completed as we also had to have an in-class presentation on what we did and how we completed it. So I called Todd to see how he was doing and the conversation went like this. Me, hey Todd, I am just calling to check up on how much you have done on the project so that we both have it finished by tomorrow so we can prepare for the presentation. Todd, I have done a little bit but I have just been busy recently with family issues and my brother's hospitalization. I knew he was lying about visiting his brother because I know that been online on Steam and Discord pretty much 24/7. Me, I know it is hard with family issues but I need you to do your half of the project so that we can both get a good grade on the presentation portion of the project. Todd, yeah. I get it but could you do my half so that I can spend more time at the hospital with my brother? I can do the presentation part but can you make the bridge? Me, I had been kind of mad that he would use his brother as an excuse to not do the project and use me and my wanting to please people to his advantage. Fine, but just to help you out, I will write the presentation so you can be next to your brother as long as possible. Being as angry as I was, I had to think of a way to sabotage his part of the project because of how lazy he was, and how much I wanted to make him pay. I decided to make the supports on his side of the bridge extremely thin, sliced the wood into fourths and only used in 1/4. Also, I had made an entirely BS report and speech for him that made him sound stupid when he read it out loud, using BS sources with names to make him say swears on accident. Flash forward to the 25th, I had brought the project and had given Todd his part of the presentation. I had raised my hand when Jaime asked who wanted to go first. Todd had clearly not read over his speech whatsoever before presenting and as soon as we got to the front of the room, we started presenting. I had read my half first which was the introduction and a little bit of information on the project, leading to Todd's half. A quarter of the way through, I could tell that both the teacher and some of my peers had realized how many times Todd had cursed on accident without him realizing. Everyone else had not realized because of what I assumed was them being tired with this being the first period of the day. After completing the speech, everyone including Todd had realized that his speech seemed extremely stupid involving him cursing as well. Now I will test the bridge. I had rolled a small but weighted boxcar across the bridge, my half first. Immediately on reaching Todd's half, it completely collapsed. Todd was standing awestruck because of how stupid he looked. I was on the verge of breaking out into laughter. Todd had received a C on his half of the project while received a B+ because of the presentation. It felt amazing to deal a little bit of justice.